Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of For a Few Billion Dollars More. Uh, really happy to have Alekh from FarMart today. Uh, really excited to talk more about how these guys have been out executing everyone else in the agritech space. Whenever I talk to people about FarMart, the thing I keep hearing is people may say that the model is similar, but these guys have really done a brilliant job of execution on the ground. uh, really happy to have you here, Alekh. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ram, for hosting me. I know we've been wanting to do this for a while, but yeah, super excited today to be on the show.
Great. Maybe you can start with a brief introduction.
Yeah, so let me just start a little bit about myself and my co-founder. So we two co-founders at building FarMart. We've known each other for 23 years. Went to the same boarding school called the Lawrence School Sonar. So our association goes very very long. In respect to FarMart, what we're building is basically the Airbnb for the food industry. So we help food ingredient beverage companies to help them source more sustainably through a more traceable value chain. Whether it's raw materials or processed material, we basically run an integrated value chain where we take care of the whole stack from production to basically distribution. Roughly grown, very large in the last, I would say, 3 odd years. But the journey has been pretty long. We've been in this space for 7.5 years. So, but yeah, super excited, on the whole food and agtech story, on in the space which we've been building in for a very very long time.
Great. Uh, as far as I understand, your first business was around tractors and this whole Uber for tractors kind of a model. And I've seen a few others kind of tinker around with that model, but I haven't seen anyone really scale it up to a very large number, so to say. Do you think there are some fundamental challenges with the model in itself? Forget about, who's executing it.
I think from an opportunity standpoint, there's a genuine problem statement to solve. I don't think a lot of people got the problem statement wrong. I think what like us, many people like us got wrong was two things. One is it's a very very micro transaction that happens hyper locally, and the second thing, which basically so the AOVs of average order values really don't make sense at a extremely hyper local level, and it's also a little bit to do with seasonality in that case. And the second thing is just farmers' ability to pay, right after a transaction. So at our time, we didn't have the tech stack on the Aadhaar payment platform, so we don't have UPIs and so on and so forth. So all these transactions had to take place either through cash or other means of payments. So I think fundamentally there is a problem to solve, but maybe it's not level one of mechanization. It is probably level 2 and 3 of mechanization where you need specialized machinery that community can basically undertake. And it's not only in India. Actually, I've kind of followed the space even after we kind of exited the space or pivoted from their spaces. That globally, most business models in this space have not really, taken off. Either they have gone, pivoted into IP, which is manufacturing of their own, or they have, looked at a more of pivoted model where they extend that model into different products and services. I think fundamentally those are two challenges which someone has to very closely look at, enable to really build a really large outcome business in this space.
You mentioned seasonality, and one of the problems I've also seen is that everyone needs the tractor at the same time, and then suddenly nobody needs the tractor. So unlike a cab where there is fluctuating demand, but different people need it at different times, here the demand consolidation is so strong from a seasonality point of view. I'm just curious if at all it can be solved from that perspective.
So I think, see, as a standalone business, it's very hard to build, but it's a great wedge into the market. Many of the agri-tech businesses probably will see transformation in their lifetime, and And basically what this model can help you do is create a strong entry point into a customer profile, and then you basically build other services, whether it's around import, advisory, other services which are hyper local to the farmer. But it is, maybe from a standalone perspective, it is a very very hard business, like you said, around seasonality to crack. And also, a cab, it's not a cab which runs on the road. It is a hardware device that works on a very very tough terrain. So with those challenges coupled, I feel someone will crack it, maybe 10 years from now, maybe next year. I don't have an exact answer to that. But use of like I feel use of drone technology in terms of rental is kind of taking off in some regions, right? With the labor cost. But I think what we really have to look at is there has to be a cost benefit analysis on the service you provide, right? Like drone is a clearly the reason why some of the regions where drones are taking off is not because like it's a better application tool. Of course it is, but it is actually because access to labor is becoming more expensive and it's also scarce. So with time, these things will happen, and as labor gets more and more difficult to access, these models will have more opportunities to build in the space.
Got it. Yeah, and as a farming business, we also see these huge challenges with labor. In fact, I was speaking to Hemendra a few weeks back, and he was saying that I go to these villages and farm pe koi dikta nahi hai. So
Yeah,
labor is becoming. I mean, I never would have imagined 10 years back that in India labor will become an issue, but it is increasingly becoming an issue. Anyways,
it's a huge problem.
it is. Moving on, you talked about the lack of financial solutions when we launched the Uber for Tractor business, and then you got into actually hardcore lending to farmers, so to say. And now there is like a lot of traction. Some guys have scaled up significantly, and there seems to be a general intent to plug in some kind of a fintech or a lending solution into any form of agribusiness. So do you think you should have lingered on with that model a little longer, or you're happy with the direction where you took and where you are right now?
Yeah, it's a great question actually. I do think about this, at fundamental level. So many of the services in the food and agriculture space actually become unviable without financing solutions, to be honest. And it's just the nature of business. Small wallet shares of farmers. There's complexity around value chains. Because there are some perishability angles to everything you do. So according to me, inherent fintech is kind of needs to be built in. Embedded fintech, which they call it nowadays, is kind of going to be in every model almost, if you're a service provider or you kind of innovate in the space. But what's a very interesting thing I kind of experience is that in our times, like not very far ago, okay, 5 years ago, but there was a lot of headwind, not a tailwind, actually against us. Whether it's around the NBFC crisis that happened, whether it's RBI coming in and ensuring that NBFCs now cannot get access to the sandbox of digital identity Aadhaar for KYC. And I think what we kind of saw that time is that yeah, it's a good business to build. We'll probably be profitable, but fundamentally where my challenge lies is still customer acquisition and the scale of the business you can build. And the closest kind of proximity I always use is of the microfinance industry, right? Like if you look at the whole MFI industry, which are also kind of evolving with time, you will probably have a few companies which are very heavy, very very like have heavy penetration in a particular region. But if you look at the scalability of the same model in across border, across regions, they tend to not really scale more efficiently. So the reason we actually pivoted is not because we didn't have, I would say, product market fit in that space. The reason we pivoted is because the ambition of Mehtab and me to build a very large outcome in a shorter amount of time was actually bigger. So what I fundamentally believe is it is going to happen. And now with the whole Aadhaar stack being more accessible to all kinds of lending solution partners, it'll become much more easier. Also, account aggregator is happening, so that makes it even more scalable. So the tailwind is in the right direction. Now it's all about entrepreneurs going and executing on that. But just to summarize, like, do I feel uh, like bad about it? Not really. Simply because I feel we are in our own journey, and it's exciting, and the ambition was very different for us to build a business which would probably be very, very large in a shorter period of time.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Coming to what you're doing right now, I remember, I think we first interacted when I was part of Atolo Labs, and we were interacting with a bunch of different players in the output marketplace. And, sitting outside, we always used to think, okay, ek aur aa gaya, wahi, bunch of fruits and vegetables, so many SKUs, so many tons per day. ठीक है, let's see, हमारे को कोई भी धंधा दे दे, it's good enough, so to say.
Yeah.
And even when you introduce your business, you introduce yourself in a very different manner. More than what you're doing right now, I would love to understand your kind of transition or your evolution from the early days, how you started, how did you differentiate yourself, and how you move to what you're doing right now. Would love to just know about that entirely.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just take off from the fintech model. So what we realized doing agri fintech is that there are two problems in the industry itself. One is customer acquisition is very, very hard, and it's pretty much every company is trying to do it offline. Because it's a very hard customer base to gain trust with. So you have to deploy boots on ground to be able to really, really acquire and service a customer. And our insight kind of came from our experience with working with these agri mom and pop stores, people like who sell seeds, fertilizer, agrochemicals, and these guys were just like sitting in a village doing like lakhs of transaction, lakhs in value in transaction. Very, very second, third generation, like modern entrepreneurs, fully digital, clued up about every solution. And what we realize is that given their first mile capabilities at the first mile, whether it's around relationship, trust, community, like the whole community side of things, why don't we focus on, building a product or a solution for servicing or solving one of their problems? And that was like the fundamental thesis that these guys are kind of the Swiss canal of the market. And if you productize their business, you will get indirect access to farmers. And luckily to our success, we have been able to prove that out from a product and standpoint. So we are very product focused guys. We always think first principle on product solution. So that became our insight that you can build product and services or micro SaaS solutions for the store owners, and that will give you immense scale. And now that we've kind of really proved that thesis out. From there on, we were actually contemplating, how to monetize the platform. The simple logic was, that SaaS in India is very, very hard to monetize. Now, it's not about food agriculture. It's just micro SaaS or consumer SaaS is very, very hard to monetize, and Indians don't typically like to pay for it. Now, what we said is, we have this massive distribution network. We have a lot of traction. We have insane layers of data around what kind of seeds are selling, what kind of fertilizer is selling, how many farmers does he service or she service. So massive, just patterns of data, what we saw. And what we saw as the opportunity larger on the side, or not on the input side, actually on the output side, is that we just knew that this is a space which is only going to grow. It's already like 300-400 billion, and there are all sorts of numbers in the market, but it is something that is fully fragmented. There's no brands in this space. Trust factor is very, very low. And if you go to a farmer and you talk to him and say that, I will save 10% of your input cost, or make you have you make you 10% higher on the output of whatever you're selling, bet 99% of farmers are going to say, help me with my output. It is not the innovation on the input side which really they care about, or at least they feel for. And that was just what we realized. We have a distribution network. We have a captive base. Output is the largest problem in the country. How do we link these directly to enterprises? And beyond that, Ram, honestly, we've just the reason when you say, and kind enough for you to say we out executed everyone, is simply because we learn and evolve almost daily. Like if you talk to me for a year from now on, we will be doing bigger, larger things, right? Like we went into not only in the phase one, we solved for the backend infrastructure problem, right? So backend infrastructure means like a very, very scalable model to source profitably at scale across the country, right? We looked at how could we build bigger moats, right? We saw a lot of our customers were asking for processed solutions. So now we are in processing, we are into distribution, we are into exports. So the whole evolution has been that how does FarMart build the most sustainable food value chain solution in the country and globally? And that has really and the reason to, when you're able to do all this together, because you have such a strong tech stack, you can do this traceably, and that is where I feel the future of a lot of businesses who are looking for these solution are going to like come to us eventually, or are already coming to us. So that's kind of what our evolution has been. And I continue to learn, honestly. I continue to question my thinking, and wherever I see opportunities that will make the company or the space bigger, uh, we continue to go after it, while being very cognizant of what we have built and how we have built it.
Thank you. One related question is, how did you build your core team? A lot of early stage startup founders are struggling to get like an extended team beyond the founders themselves. What worked for you? How did you go about putting that together?
Yeah, so I I wish I had a very direct answer to this, but it's something. Talent is something which is kind of the most important factor after you get your PMF on whether you'll build a great business or not. And I can't emphasize it enough. Like at least nowadays, I spend at least 60% of my time on the talent front. I actually lead talent acquisition in the company directly, and it's kind of weird when at the scale you're doing that, right? It's simply because talent and retention is my only key metric I kind of have for myself. Simply because if you get the right people in, you get them the right opportunities, they build great businesses. It's as simple as that. It's not something which is of rocket science. Now, in the early stage of the journey, all you have to do is you have to build relationships. And most of my really amazing hires, I have built 7-10 years of relationship in this market. And no great person will come to you on day zero because of you are, in fact, in for the money. In fact, most people have taken 60, 70, 80% pay cuts to join us in the early stage, and you show them the vision that and you have to execute. And you execute, they see the vision happening, they get charged, the incentives are aligned, and you keep on getting better and better, right? So according to me, the relationship building is the most important thing. You can't go into a call saying that I'm going to hire this person. Probably you won't, but and even if it's a great person, you will probably take 3 years to continuously speak to the person, get aligned, find the right timing, and then things happen, right? So in the early stage, get 4 or 5 people who you build relationships with, who have executed in other spaces, and then don't care about whether you're putting them in operations, technology, product, because at early stage all you have to do is go and execute. And once you have the right roadmap for execution, people do go and like do great things. Beyond that is you have to be just obsessed about talking to more people, and selling your vision. And 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 in all this thing, right, the most important thing is a business. uh, Between me and Mehtab, it is crazy how involved we are in business, because when you have, there is no one who's going to drive business like you, and get you, because of the level you care about your business. So you have to, people need to see that you are extremely passionate and executing every day, and then automatically there is a lot of goodwill that goes around in the market, and you also treat people well. Eventually, things fall in place. But like I said, it's no magic bullet, but there are simple steps which have to be undertaken, and relationship building for me is like the number one thing from day zero.
Fantastic. I don't think many people have even thought about, spending like 2-3 years in getting the right leadership team in their organization. What you're saying makes perfect sense, but I don't think most of the founders think in like that kind of a long term. And it's phenomenal that even today, after so many years, and after having reached such a scale, you are overall leading the talent acquisition. That's a great and powerful message to the founder community. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
The overall mood in the market today, especially with the VCs, is Agritech doesn't seem to be taking off, so to say, and especially on the output business, there is a lot of pessimism. What's your take? Where do you see the things moving? If someone is trying to build a new business in this space, where do you see like more opportunities going forth?
Yeah, so I am in the entrepreneurship game. I'm not in the VC game, to be honest. So I can't really comment on the emotions and the conversations which are happening in the back door. See, I just feel the whole space, not only agri, just everyone is going through a hard time. So it's not like, this is, firstly, I just want to say that it's not that food and agriculture particularly is not doing well and so on and so forth. There are enough amount of examples in every space that are struggling, and rightly so. Like if you make bad decisions, if you are not cautious with your capital, you are trying to buy your growth, things will go wrong. And categorically, a lot of entrepreneurs, at least I used to also think like, money is the answer. I can trust you. I can after raising probably 40-50 million in equity and 20-30 million in working capital, like from the top banks, VC investors, it is not going to make your life easy. So there is just something which everyone needs to know before even wishfully thinking that things will get better on that. But what I want to clearly say is, if on first principle basis, do we have problems? Yes. uh, do our companies building solutions which are actually addressing those problems? Maybe yes and no. And the reason I say this is because uh, Indian companies have to struggle with two things, right? One is getting PMF. PMF is, for example, just PMF is getting 1 million users on your product or app. Uh, it can be selling your solution to 100,000 factories. It can be selling your product to 1 million retailers, right? But there's a second kind of PMF, which is actually true PMF in India. It's called, according to my terminology, we use monetizable PMF. So the problem which most agri-tech companies have faced is they have got confused between PMF and monetizable PMF. So, Indians, especially, this is very special to India, honestly, if you ask me, that Indian companies have to realize that, especially agri-tech companies, that have you hit PMF or have you hit monetizable PMF? And until unless you find monetizable PMF, please do not go and raise excess amount of capital, because it just doesn't work, basically, because you start to make stupid decisions and things go wrong. So fundamentally, what we have to solve in our space is to differentiate between these two simple factors. And once you filter out this information to the basic, things will look actually very different, and companies will look very different. That's just my overall feeling about where the whole promise of this space got lost in these two simple solutions, which we kind of missed along the way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Coming back to your own business and acquisitions in the business, I was speaking to someone who's looking at M&A deals in agri, and he said that one of the biggest issues he sees is, even if there is a good deal on the table, the mood of the board, and which obviously includes some investors, is highly unpredictable. Suddenly they're in a mood, yeah, go ahead and buy, and suddenly they're like, why are you buying this? So even if there's a good deal on the table, it's not necessary it'll move through. So I'm just curious, how smooth or how difficult was your acquisition of Sabji Mandi?
So we actually went through it quite fast, because there's a problem around our supply chain. We're a sub fulfillment. Eventually, we have to do fulfillment, right? Which needs logistics, and we were always in this space for looking for talent in the logistics space. And here came an opportunity. I spoke to the founder. They were actually going through a rough patch, even though I believe the thesis and the model they had built was really, really smart. And because you have this problem, or like you have a plug in the system to address, I quickly kind of moved on it, and things rolled down. But the way to see, the point is, like with the boards, right? Like it's a relationship, which like anything, like with my founder, I have a relationship, with my employees, I have a relationship, with like my my parents, I have a relationship, right? Similarly, I have a relationship with the board, and you have to be transparent enough to say that, okay, X is my problem, right? X is my company's problem, and you say it over a period of time. The problem that happens sometimes is you just wake up and you say, oh, great opportunity, let's do this. There's also a lot of euphoria that you feel, or like your adrenaline goes high and you feel like, oh shit, this is going to solve my problem. Now the point is, you are experiencing this every day, but haven't said it to your co-founder, your board, and so on and so forth. So people get really caught out of ground that what is they looking for, like what is the problem they're solving through this. So I think it's just simple, more communication. And yes, board is actually, the way I look at boards, right? It is actually here to sharpen your thinking. It is here to actually provide you with the right amount of network and understanding based on their experience of, so that you make lesser mistakes, at least in the later phases of your life, of your journey, right? So I think enough material is there on board relationships and how entrepreneurs should manage it. But I don't think so India has really come at that stage of maturity. But I at least in my case, I have probably one of the strongest boards in the country, I would say, like with the firepower we have of our board members, right? But the reason I kind of work well with them, or Mehtab and me work well with them, because we're just so transparent, and because they are here for the same incentives as you, and things go well. And sometimes it doesn't, but it's your job to maintain a relationship like you would have your employee with someone else.
I was just reading this recent article, or rather like a small message from Vinod Khosla, who says that 90% of the boards don't add any value. I'm very happy that you're very happy with your board, and you see them as a true partner, and you have a good transparent communication with them. Fantastic stuff. You raised around, just before this whole chaos of funding winter started, and just curious, where do you see your next milestones? How much runway do you have, and when do you think you will be out to raise another round?
Yeah. So in terms of cash, we actually have probably, for all the money we raised in the last 2 years, we have 85% of it still in the bank.
Wow.
So we are a bit up positive as a company, so we don't really we don't burn money per se. So if you ask me how much runway we have, probably 10 odd years, 10 11 years
Awesome.
to place up. So I don't think that those are the problems which we face as a company. But in terms of our next set of milestones is very clear. We want to be the largest food company in this country, and what that fundamentally means is that we will be the company which scalably sources, processes, and distributes food in a true and sustainable and traceable way across the country. And our milestones are pretty much simple. That unless we reach a significant market share of this space in the next 5 to 10 years, we won't stop.
Fantastic. Great to hear about your journey and how things are evolving. Any last messages?
No, I mean, I just wanted to thank you. You've been, I kind of heard a few of the podcasts, before, and it's. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of founders, or maybe management, folks, employees who are thinking about this space. I think we can't get too negative. It's a cycle. Stuff happens, and we will, because just on first principle basis, there are problems to be addressed, and there will be better solutions. And the infrastructure, public infrastructure in India in terms of tech is just going better and better. So I think what we have to fundamentally believe in is that the space has a lot of problems, and this country can only progress to the 5 trillion, 10 trillion economy if this space really adds more value to the economy, and incomes go up. So I think overall, just not saying it, but my emotions have not changed since 2016. And whether it's now or before, I feel the same way exactly about this space and how it has posed a huge opportunity for everyone.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ram. Thanks for hosting me.